Good to go.
Welcome everybody to the October 5th Cascade Speakeasy and Electric Toasters combined Toastmasters meeting. First meeting in October for us, and it's a beautiful evening. Tonight, do we have a Sergeant at Arms to start us out with the Pledge of Allegiance?
We do, Mr. President. If everyone would please mute themselves and focus on my screen and my voice and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And back to you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Rob. Our Toastmaster tonight, Steve Schwinn. Steve, would you take it away?
Thank you. I'd be happy to. Well, we had minimal collateral damage tonight with role changes. Everyone's pretty well here and looking bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. We're ready to roll. I don't know. Was I doing? Am I now like asking if somebody wants to do a joke of the day? I haven't quite completely wrapped my arms around that one. Somebody want to take my place from last week? Okay, moving along. I would like to introduce the general evaluator to tell us a little bit about how the meeting is conducted. Pat Whitfield, would you please jump in?
Well, my responsibility will be to look for bloopers, to see what we've done well, and to see where we might have missed the mark just a little bit. However, this is such an accomplished group, probably I will have nothing to do but bestow huge amounts of praise upon all of you. Thank you.
Can you introduce your team?
Oops, senior moment. So sorry about that. Okay. The evaluator number 1 will be Christina Stepper, and Christina will evaluate Lloyd's speech. Christina?
Thank you, Pat. Tonight, Lloyd is doing a very interesting speech on successful collaboration. The purpose of the project is for Lloyd to be introduced to or review strategies for working in a collaborative group. The purpose of his speech is for Lloyd to share some aspects of his experience practicing collaboration with a small team. Look for organization in his speech. It can be humorous, informational, any type he chooses. It will be 5 to 7 minutes. I will share my comments when called upon. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you very much, Christina. Then we have our timer. And Joyce, what did you decide to use to let people know when the time is up?
Oh, we are
props.
in for a treat. We're always in for a treat. We are Toastmasters. I have decided to go with the old trusty friend. Let's start with table topics. 1 minute is green. 1.5 minutes is mellow yellow. 2 is big red. As for the prepared speeches for Lloyd, 5 minutes green, 6 minutes yellow, and 7 minutes red. Evaluations, Christina will have 2 for green, 2.5 for yellow, and 3 is red. Thank you very much. Back to you, Pat.
Thank you very much, Joyce. Next is our grammarian, Mary Syrie, who will introduce the word of the day, which we can't wait to hear as we expand our vocabularies.
And that is one of the purposes of having a grammarian, is to expand not only the grammarian's listening skills, but our awareness of usage of the English language and of vocabulary. I will be listening for proper and improper use of the English language, making notes of it, and I will report that back at the end of the meeting. I also have the word of the day. Now, before the word of the day, I have a special phrase because I've noticed that there are a lot of people here who like beer. And I found a word in my dictionary. It's called small beer. Small beer this is a true thing. It's something of small importance or trivia. The monthly fee that Sheila pays for a train pass is small beer compared to having to worry about keeping a car in the city. But that's not the word of the day. I just thought you beer drinkers would enjoy knowing small beer. The word of the day is there. Surfeit. Surfeit is an overabundant supply, an excess, an intemperate or immoderate indulgence in something, or disgust caused by excess. I see this word a lot in print, and I always have to look it up because I'm not sure if it means too much or not enough, but it means too much. The prose is weighed down by a surfeit of dense and obscure vocabulary. Surfeit.
Right, Mary, thank you very much. Last but not least is our awe counter, Rob Tidd, who will be looking for a surfeit of ahs, ums, and all that other junk. Rob.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. My role tonight is to help identify those noxious words that fill our speeches, the ands, the buts, the so's, and to help you eliminate the surfeit of filler words that punctuate those speeches. I will be looking for not only those words, but also any grunts or strange animal noises and the occasional those will be identified and noticed by the awe counter. So I will report at the end of the meeting as to who might have transgressed in using some of those filler words. And I will report at the end of the meeting. Thank you, Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you. And now I will turn it back over to the Toastmaster, who is Steve Schwinn. You're on, Steve.
Thank you. I feel like the reference to small beer suggests that beer isn't important in our lives. I would suggest that that thought is small beer. However, I would also implore you not to have a surfeit of beer, or you will not be able to walk to the kitchen. We have a speaker tonight, Lloyd Smith, who has shared a few thoughts and will share more. Almost all of us have learned sometimes through unhappy experiences that working with a team to complete a task can be challenging and sometimes unpleasant. That's usually due to a combination of not having a clearly stated goal and not determining the process the team will use to reach whatever the goal is. Occasionally, obnoxious team members contribute to the unhappiness. There's not much that can be done about obnoxious team members. But there are techniques that can help a team avoid or at least reduce the challenges and unpleasantness. Those techniques comprise the content of successful collaboration, the required project for level 3 of the team collaboration path. This evening, Lloyd Smith will discuss a recent collaborative task he was involved with and explain how the process worked to complete the task successfully and fairly, quickly, with a minimum of unhappiness and confusion. Lloyd Smith, Rewriting the Rules.
Thank you, Steve. This is an interesting project because it's one of the Toastmasters projects that has a very close connection to what many of us have to do in the real world. That is, getting along with a group of people in order to achieve some task or other. And as Steve pointed out in the introduction, sometimes that works pretty well and other times it does not work well at all. And I've made my share of mistakes along the way, but I had a recent experience where I did not screw up, and that's the one that I want to share with you tonight. I live in a condominium complex. Condos are an unusual thing in many ways. You own the inside of your house, but you don't own the outside. But there are some areas on the outside that are kind of a no man's land. They're called limited common areas. What that means is that you have to have a way to determine the rules and make sure everybody understands them, or there's going to be constant trouble in the neighborhood. Every condo complex has a homeowners association board of directors that in a way creates the rules, but definitely enforces them and interprets them, handles the money, takes care of big things like, the sewer system if it goes bad, that kind of thing. And Ambercrest is no exception to that. There's an appointed board. And it was interesting because a few months ago, one of our board members moved away, and the board president, who I've known for about 25 years, asked me if I would be willing to take the spot on the board. And I said, sure. So I was appointed to the HOA board. There's an old saying that no good deed goes unpunished. And this may be an illustration of that. There are lots of things you just don't want to talk about, but you have to talk about them anyway. Well, anyway, at the last meeting, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, a section of the rules and regulations that applied to the replacement of windows in our condos turned out to be impossible to work. The reason is it specifies that if a window goes bad, it has to be replaced with a window of the same brand. Well, that was great 20 years ago. The idea is to maintain the architectural look of the building. You don't want somebody to put in a cheapo aluminum window or something. It was fine 20 years ago, but it's not so fine now because there are no authorized dealers for that brand of window in Washington State anymore. So what to do? Sooner or later, windows go bad. That's just the way life is. So the board decided, well, we really need to rewrite that section of the rules so that people can actually replace windows if need be. And I volunteered to at least help do that. I write quickly and I can figure stuff out. And I figured, okay, that'll work fine. So the rules and regulations, this is the set for Ambercrest, 36 fun-filled pages. And the problem is it was written way back when, and then it's slowly been added to and changed and whatnot. And the result is the language has gotten messy. There are contradictions built into it and omissions and things that need to be fixed. And the little window thing was 2.5 pages. So I thought, there's no way you can spend 2.5 pages talking about windows. I mean, more like 2.5 paragraphs. Now, here's the thing. I have experience helping teams rewrite stuff. The first year I moved from the high school to the district office, I was asked to oversee the rewriting of the elementary school report card. Now, that may sound like it's no big deal, but you haven't lived until you've been in a room with 20 angry first grade teachers who are yelling at you. It's kind of like having nuns beat you up or something. It's hard to describe what that's like. People take things like that seriously. So I decided if there's going to be trouble, it's not going to be just me. So I asked a couple of other board members to help me out with my little rewriting thing. I'm the most junior member of the board, and I figured, if I did something I shouldn't do, at least they'd let me know. So it looked like everything was going to go okay. Now the question is, when you're rewriting a document like that, how do you start? If you have 2 or 3 people, or worse yet, more than that, and you have everybody write a draft, well, then how do you put them together? On the other hand, if one person just writes the whole thing, why do you need the 2 or 3 other people, except to get mad at the one person who took over? So I asked the other 2 people, what do you want to do? Well, they didn't know. So I said, well, how about this? How about if I write just a rough draft, I send it to you guys, we all offer suggestions and stuff, and then do it that way. And they said, wow, sounds like a good idea. And I know why. They figured, hey, he's going to do most of the work. So that's the best possible way to get this task done. So I did it. I wrote the rough draft. But the thing is, my rough draft, I intended to be the final draft. And it was well done. And I showed it to the other two and they said, wow, that looks pretty good. Let's just leave it like it is. And so we put all 3 names on it and we gave it to the rest of the board and the problem was averted. Now, all it took was a little bit of cleaning up for punctuation and whatnot. And at the next board meeting, they'll pass it. And then if somebody does have a window go bad, they'll be able to go buy a window that looks like the ones we've got, but not necessarily the same brand we got, which they can't do anymore anyway. Now, all of this worked out pretty well. The point of this is that it's a poor idea to try to be part of a group doing a task and take the whole thing over unless you create the impression that everybody's got a say in it. And actually, you want to create the reality that everybody's got a say in it, whether or not they choose to take advantage of that. For one thing, that diffuses everything out. This experience, though, did create a second problem for me. The board thought, wow, this is great. And this whole document needs to be tightened up. Would I like to take a shot at it? The answer is hell no, but I've got to think of a more polite way to say that, I guess. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Lloyd. That seemed to fly right along. Great job. And now, can we have a minute? Yes.
Okay, sorry.
I was getting there. A minute to share thoughts with Lloyd about his speech.
Sorry, I get excited.
I love that.
One minute. Steve, you're muted.
I am, you're right. Thank you, everyone. By now, you definitely do have your thoughts wrapped up. And we will move into the next segment of our meeting, which is table topics. And our table topics master tonight, who I know has riveting questions that will really test our aplomb, is Ron Slybaugh.
Well, thank you, Steve. A pretty high set of expectations. However, I will do my best. I want to get started without a lengthy introduction. So, Ian, I want to ask you the first question. May you live in interesting times. Seems like a pretty simple, innocuous phrase on its face. Do you view that phrase, as a blessing or a curse? Unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'd have to say both, a blessing and a curse. Every day, there's blessings and curses to my new normal, they call it. I'm home with a couple of kids that need to be guided through various tasks throughout the day. I'm at home trying to still maintain a full-time job. And the mix of those seems to be a bit of a curse at times, but there's other times when it's absolutely a blessing. I get to see how my kids learn, how my kids react to different situations. I get to see how I can react to a situation and reflect on it, and later that same day, go back and adjust the way I've handled the situation and see what kind of difference it makes with those kids. Those are things that I can then take back, as funny as it may seem, and use in my communication with other coworkers, with other family members. Having this opportunity to be a part-time teacher has really given me an opportunity to strengthen my, I would say, communication skills as well as negotiation skills, and gives me more of a respect for the people that do this full time. Being a teacher can't be that simple of a job the way I've heard it made out to be at times. Thanks, Ron. Back to you.
Excellent response, Ian. Appreciate it. I did pick you out for that one because I think you are one of the younger of the group, although our youngest one isn't here today, which I believe would be Jackie. I did look this phrase up. I found that normally when Lloyd chooses these for us, it isn't something that he necessarily dreams up, and some of them do have some history behind them. This one in Wikipedia, I didn't spend a lot of time on Wikipedia. They suggested it was a Chinese origin, and I found another site that suggested that it wasn't. One that claimed to be the more credible was phrases.org. It was, I believe, from the United Kingdom. It says that the phrase, "May you live in interesting times," is of 20th century British origin, meaning, "May you experience much disorder and trouble in your life." So a bit of a curse rather than a blessing. But I got to tell you, I like your answer quite a bit. And a lot of folks that were nodding when you were presenting here, so I think they liked it as well. Kathleen, you still here? There you are. I want to ask you next. "May you live in interesting times" is used ironically with the clear implication that uninteresting times of peace and tranquility are more life enhancing than interesting ones. Do you agree or disagree?
If the question is, do I think times of relative peace and tranquility are the better times? Well, I would have to say yes, because it would be illogical to say anything else. However, I would say I find these times, even just the last few days, to be amazingly exciting. I feel like I'm in a soap opera. You kind of, I'm losing track a little bit of the reality of it, but really am enjoying rushing to the news section 3 times today to find out what was going on in the hospital and who's been riding around in their car and who's mad about it and who's wearing masks and who's been diagnosed or tested positive. I'm embarrassed to admit I'm enjoying it. Occasionally, I think, wow, this is the leader of the free world. I should be taking this more seriously. But I have been taking it seriously for a long time. And right now, I'm just enjoying it. As soon as we finish tonight, I will be dashing off to look at the news headlines, and there will be a surfeit of headlines, I am sure. I'll find out exactly what's happening, and it will be exciting, and there will be lots of it, and it will be no small beer, that's for sure. Back to you, Ron.
Thank you. Small beer, great. You like that, Mary? I saw you chuckle just a little bit. Good. Lloyd, even though you gave a speech here, and typically we don't ask the folks that give a speech to partake in table topics, I really want your opinion, being the resident debate expert. I'm going to assume that you watched the presidential debate. If you didn't, then well, just pretend that you did. And looking through the lens of what a debate should accomplish, how would you evaluate the recent presidential debate? That's first part of my question. And the second is, when in your opinion was the last meaningful presidential debate, if not this one?
Thank you, Ron. That's an interesting question. The debate, in quotation marks, was not. None of those presidential debates are really debates. They're joint, what would you call them, press conferences or press opportunities or something like that. And typically the candidates prepare for them, according to the books that have been written about it, by honing down their message to 3 or 4 key phrases and then just relentlessly repeating them, no matter what question they're asked. They just repeat their key phrases, trying to get them to sink in. This debate this past week didn't even have that, because both of them were dedicated to talking over one another all the time. The president worse than Biden. There were, I can't imagine doing this, but somebody actually counted up all of the interruptions. There were 91 of them. Trump committed 71 of them and Biden committed the other 20. It was really kind of a bizarre spectacle. And this has a, to us, it was probably just stupid and disgusting and whatnot. But I was talking to a couple of elementary school teachers I know, and they think this has had a potentially bad effect, because here you have the president of the United States and a guy who wants to be the president of the United States acting like there were 9-year-olds on a playground yelling, R2 are not, R2 are not, and throwing crap at each other. So to me, these aren't debates. They're not effective. The only one that I can remember and that I've seen that actually were sort of debates was the original modern set of debates between John Kennedy and Richard Nixon back in 1959. They actually argued about things like, our US policy with regards to China and that sort of thing. And it was a reasoned exchange of views. The one since then, not so much. And the one this week was disastrous. I can't see why they're bothering to have any more of them. Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Lloyd. I genuinely wanted to hear your opinion on that, and you provided it. And again, looking at folks here, I think there was general agreement. Although Pat was the only one that I saw agree, and it could be because she remembers the debate between Kennedy and Nixon in 1959. So with that, Pat, I'd like to ask you a question, because you've been on this rock or this planet for an awfully long time. If I've done my math right, we were born somewhere around 1940-ish. Means you've been through World War II, although I wouldn't expect you to remember a whole lot from it. Korean War, Vietnam War, Civil Rights Act of 1964, Clean Water Act, although maybe it was kind of boring in 1972. I'm really not sure. Is there anything that you found more eventful, impactful, you'd like to describe for us in a few minutes? I mean, compared to what's going on in terms of interesting times compared to 2020? Something else that sticks out?
I've been thinking a lot, and to be perfectly honest, I was born in 1940, so I'm 80. I guess that makes me the grande dame of our group of people. I've been thinking a lot about the flow of history through the years. Actually, I remember when I was 5 years old, a parade down Central Avenue in Orange, New Jersey, to celebrate VJ Day. I didn't know what VJ Day was, but I knew that everyone was so happy. Everyone was so happy. Moving on, it seems like we've had more than our fair share of wars in my lifetime alone. World War II, the Korean War, the war in Vietnam, the wars in the Middle East, the war in Afghanistan, which is our longest war. The thing that impresses me the most when I think about that is how many young people voluntarily, after the draft was over, came into the service of our nation. How proud we are of them all, the ones who came back, the ones who didn't come back. When I see the names in Arlington National Cemetery, I think of all of those young people whose lives were unable to be fulfilled, and yet we prize them so much. The other thing that I think about is I've been singing God Bless America when I walk every morning a mile and a half. I sing that song because when I was a little kid and went to school, we pledged allegiance to the flag and we learned patriotic songs. And those songs reoccur in my brain. And right now, I really want God to bless America so that we can feel proud of her again.
You're on mute, Ron.
I must have been unmuted and then I turned around and muted myself. Sorry for that. I said, thank you, Pat. It certainly made me and several others smile, and that's why I was hoping to get out of your response. Vicki, experiencing disorder and trouble in your life in 2020. Let's just look at that glass half full approach that Kathleen answered her question. Moving on to 2021 or 2022, with society as a whole or just you personally, do you see anything good? There has to be something good that's going to come out of 2020.
There is going to be a lot of good that is coming out because 2020 has given all of us a time to slow down and think about what is important in our lives and what is important for our country and other people. And I have had the privilege for the last 10 days with working with people who are in the field of transformation and making everybody part of a group that wants to do good in the world. And it's very promising to see all of these people who recognize that we can have a wonderful country, world, if we just work together. And it was really interesting. This weekend, I decided to watch the Netflix show Away. And it's about a group of different astronauts that are going to Mars, and they're from different countries, and how they bond and then have their differences and everything. And it was really interesting to see how a group of individuals with different cultures and beliefs can come together. And I know that since we've had a chance to sit back, reflect, and decide what we want, that we can change the world and become a better place so that we're not destroying it anymore, and that we're working together and being one race, which is the human race. Back to you.
Thank you, Vicki. You launched right into your response. You didn't even really have to think about it, like you knew what I was going to ask. Good job. Mary, when I asked Kathleen that question, and actually when she was responding to it, you looked really happy. You were smiling a lot. So I want to ask you the same question. Do you think that that uninteresting times of peace and tranquility are more life-enhancing than interesting ones? Go.
I think difficult times gives us perspective, so we appreciate more the good times. And I agree with Vicki too, that boy, 2021, 2022 and beyond are going to be really good times. We can meet together, we can see people face to face. I ran into Doreen Smith at Fred Meyer a few days ago. It was so nice to see her. And we went for each other and then pulled back, can't do that. And Doreen said, oh, let's hug. So we did. It was a naughty thing to do, but we hugged and agreed. It's so nice to see people in person and to see people breathe and hear them firsthand without just looking at this square that we're all sitting in. I had to laugh at Kathleen's answer because it reminded me of a speech I gave about appreciating good times. I kept a journal, and what I realized is I'm looking at the news too much Facebook, too much of these things that are getting me off track. I guess it would have been okay, Kathleen, if I laughed at all of it and just thought how silly everything is. So that's a good perspective. That's what was amusing me about Kathleen's answer. It's the same, we're doing the same thing, but I'm taking the, this is a bad aspect, and Kathleen's found something to smile about, something to smile about. That's what's important.
Thank you, Mary. Excellent perspective. So I understand we have a little bit of time left, but to be honest, I'm completely out of questions. But I do want to share something positive. I know that I have at times been a bit of a negative Nelly in 2020. And as some of you know, my wife shows our dogs. We have these Vizslas. Some of you have seen Zen up on my lap from time to time. And we have a fair amount of them, and she likes to show dogs. Well, of course, with COVID and social distancing requirements, there have been very few dog shows this year. But my wife, a member of the Puget Sound Vizsla Club in Washington, teamed up with some folks from the Trails End Club down in Oregon and put together a show in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Kind of funny, huh? Oregon, Washington show in Idaho. Outdoors, and I figured out how to meet Idaho's requirements. It was at the fairground. And I had a job there. They referred to me as the COVID cop, although I don't think that's what I necessarily was. On day one, I had to check everybody in, collect their waiver if they had signed it, or have them sign a waiver if they hadn't, and take their temperature and give them a colored armband. And that was to know everybody that had checked in and signed and of course didn't have a fever. Then in the remaining 2 days, I had to get these folks and have them come. I just had to take their temperature and give them a different color armband. I was a little bit nervous about how this could roll out with the polarization and diversity. And there's about 80 people that I had to check every day. I didn't have a single negative comment about the whole thing. Everybody was absolutely fantastic. And that's what I wanted to go out on today, sharing this with you. I did have myself worked up, and I was driving over there on Thursday night, had a little bit of anxiety about, man, how am I going to handle people if they're just disrespectful, if they don't want to follow the rules? And there was none of it. And on day two, I found a couple folks that had forgot to check in, and I just went up with my little temperature gun and an armband, and I asked if I could take their temperature, and they let me. They apologized for forgetting. They put their armband on, and I got their name and went and logged them in. So it all worked out really great. It was a good weekend away, a good de-stress. Had a wonderful time. So for everybody that contributed, thank you very much. Good, positive responses. Wouldn't expect anything less from this group. It was really enjoyable table topics. Thank you. And let's see, back to what, Toastmaster, right? Yeah, back to the Toastmaster.
How about me? I'll do it. I have.
You'll do what?
I'll be the Toastmaster.
Okay. Yeah.
I had just a thought on the question Lloyd was given. I was just astounded. I only did like 28 seconds before I could not take it. Watching 9-year-olds beating up on each other is just beyond me. And there was a reference to the idea that potentially this was Trump's strategy to throw the debate into his favor, although maybe he didn't, if that were the case, then he didn't take into account for the fact that the strategy could backfire and that somebody would argue back and he wouldn't be able to steal control. It was just a free-for-all. It was gloves off insanity. more than I could ever have taken. You would have had to chain me in a chair and put toothpicks in my eyes to make me watch that whole thing. And then in light of the other thought that struck me was the good of 2020. Most people have seen this as like a train wreck, which I agree, it's been trying at best. But I have to say, this was a year where it was an opportunity for me to not go out of the house by necessity, that gave me a taste of slowing down a little bit. I enjoyed the time. It allowed me to pursue my passions a bit and get a taste of not running into traffic every day as I have for the past 40 years. And it was not a bad thing overall in my mind. 2020 had some silver lining in it for me. That is my moment on the soapbox. With that, I will turn the meeting over to our general evaluator, Pat, to tell us how it went.
All I can say is, wow. First of all, there was some really elegant use of language throughout, many people making elegant statements. For example, Rob talked about a surfeit of filler words and transgressions of speech instead of when I said bloopers. I really like transgressions of speech so much better. It's much more elegant. Steve used a phrase that I thought was really interesting, that the questions would test our aplomb. Now, how often have you heard the word aplomb used in everyday speech? Lovely. It was just beautiful. Ron, you deserve a gold star on your forehead for many things that you did this evening. That's the old elementary teacher in me speaking. And you could very well have been one of my students back when I was an elementary teacher and before I became a college professor. You did research, first of all, on the theme, which I thought was really informative for all of us. You had great questions. They were really thought-provoking, but they were positive. You used some interesting phrases, like when you called yourself a negative Nelly. Okay, that was both alliterative, and it was kind of hard to see you as a negative Nelly, but you really did a good job with that. The only recommendation, oh, and you also give excellent feedback. Each speaker does their thing, and you immediately give them feedback. And that's very helpful as well. The only recommendation that I would make to you is to really try to be careful about words that end in ing, because you tend to drop the G. I keep forgetting, we were talking, it's forgetting and talking. And this seems to be chronic. So maybe if you can just think about it whenever you're speaking, at least in the Toastmaster context, that would be helpful. Lloyd, I was happy to see that you presented your speech standing. We're so used to see you sitting at your desk with your library behind you. And that was a real asset to what you were trying to convey in your speech. Again, in terms of using colorful language, as someone who went to both parochial school and Catholic girls' school, I loved your metaphor. It was like having nuns beat you up. If none of you have ever, anybody here been to Catholic school, raise your hand if you've been to Catholic school. Okay, Kathleen, with a name like Kathleen McNulty, that doesn't surprise me. You know what I'm talking about, right? If you want to know some really badass women, you got to meet some real nuns. But that was an excellent metaphor. Kathleen, the language you used, the metaphor you used about living in a soap opera, I think all of us could really relate to that, living in a soap opera, because that's what it felt like. Since we have an excellent ah counter, I'm not going to get into any of the ums and ahs, and I'm going to turn it over to the people who are managing the smaller parts of it, since I was moving right into the large picture. So Christina, could you give us some feedback on Lloyd's speech?
I'm going to split this response into several categories. One, presentation style. Number two, content. Then a couple suggestions. And my favorite thing will be last. Presentation style, as Pat mentioned, standing up was excellent. You looked at the camera and made eye contact with the camera on your computer most of the time, which gave us the sense of you making eye contact with us individually. Very well done. Your gestures were up where we could see them. I especially enjoyed when you, with both hands, said slowly being added and changed when you were talking about changes in the contract. Good use of voice and inflection. No notes. Excellent job. As to content, your introduction was, again, excellent for the Toastmaster to share with us, to give us an idea where you were headed before your speech began. I appreciated the way you explained the background of your collaborative experience. You told us about Ambercrest, the situation, how things function there before you got into the situation itself. Again, as Pat mentioned, the use of metaphors was excellent. I also liked that you gave us recommendations based on your experiences in the collaborative situation. Things that we could apply in similar situations ourselves. As far as suggestions, the transition from the story of the first grade teachers and the metaphor back to Ambercrest, I got just a bit lost there. I wasn't sure where we were for about a sentence. Then it occurred to me we were back at Ambercrest. Maybe something to make that transition easier. Perhaps when you're ready to give the recommendation, saying, here are 2 or 3 things I learned from this experience that I'd like to share with you. That would have helped me know recommendations were coming. As to what I enjoyed most, you are a pro at the art of storytelling. I always enjoy your stories. Neither small beer nor a surfeit of details. Well-balanced, excellent story, pardon me, excellent presentation. Thank you, I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you very much, Christina. Let's now hear from our timer, Joyce.
I had to unmute first. It has been a wonderful meeting. I look forward to these more than I can say. This was not a surfeit of any means, of any kind of nonsense. It was, everything was as it needed to be. Everyone spoke succinctly, if I could just get that word out. My apologies, Pat, I have a speech impediment. We will get to the timing. We will start with table topics. Ian, 1:47. Kathleen, 1:38. Lloyd, 2 minutes, 9 seconds. Pat, 2 minutes, 17 seconds. Vicky, 1 minute, 40 seconds. Mary, 1 minute, 36 seconds. Lloyd, let's see, your speech time requirement was 5 to 7 minutes. Your actual time was 6 minutes and 21 seconds. It's wonderful. Christina Stepper for the evaluation was 3 minutes, 20 seconds. Thank you very much. Back to you, Pat.
Okay. Madam Grammarian, how did we do in our use of language?
I think we did very well. And Pat, you stole my thunder there. Those are my notes. Oops, you got that one. Now, I'm going to take issue with you, Pat, because I believe that like having nuns beat you up is a simile, not a metaphor. It's a simile. So I also like Steve's test our aplomb, and I had to look it up so that I knew what aplomb meant. People, it means poise. It tested our poise. Ron, I also caught a bit of alliteration with COVID cop, and I enjoyed that too. Well, you had fun with small beer. I just think those kind of phrases are a hoot. Steve, Rob, Kathleen, and Christina, go out and have a beer after a meeting today. And a lot of people use surf it as well. Pat, Rob, Steve, Kathleen, Christina, and Joyce. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Now for our mortal sins, the counter will share with us. Rob.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. Before I give you my report, I just wanted to tell you, when I saw what the theme was tonight, it reminded me of one of the last times I was in Hawaii as being one of the most interesting times I was there. And I attempted to go surfing. And I got a little afraid out there on a wave. And my wife said to me, just surf it. So I just leave you with that thought. We did very well tonight with the counting. There were very few filler words, and there were absolutely no grunts or groans. Good job, everyone. Vicki, your favorite word of choice is and you had a few of those. Lloyd, you had 2 ands, and I think your word of choice is awe. Steve, I caught, I think, 1 and everyone else, no filler words, no grunts, no groans. Job well done. And that's my report, Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you very much. And now I will return it to our President, Ian.
Thanks, Pat, and everybody else tonight. At this point, I know that Vicki has a comment she'd like to make. I'd like to know if Lloyd has any additional comments that he would like to make.
Just 2 things. Vicki, are you going to talk about the October 17th thing?
I am.
Okay, I won't then. If you have not yet paid your dues for either or both clubs, be sure to do that. Get the dues either to Ron or to Eric, as the case may be. I have a feeling that lots and lots of clubs are having a struggle getting the dues in. That's just the way it goes. It's just the situation we're in. So what can you do? Next week, Jackie's speech is scheduled to be an 8 to 10. There is room for another speech if you want to sign up for that. It's really important every week that we have a prepared speech in case we have a guest, because if a guest dropped in and all we have is table topics, it doesn't look like there's a lot of value to what we do. Just, off the cuff speaking, why should anyone pay $50 for that? So that's why there needs to be a prepared speech. So anyway, if you want to speak next week, you can. There's still 1 spot left after Jackie does. So I will turn it back to Ian, I guess.
Thanks, Lloyd. And Vicki? Oh, you're muted.
There we go. All right. I had just put in the chat the registration link for our October 17th Membership Development Day. I didn't know what to call this event. There's these things that you have to come up with titles to entice everybody. What this is it's a chance for us to celebrate our members. We have a lot of people who worked really hard in the 2019-2020 Toastmaster year to earn awards. Most of all, Distinguished Toastmaster. We have one of our Distinguished Toastmasters, Mary, who will be honored. And so it would be nice if we all registered and could attend. It is Saturday, the 17th from 9 to 1. Not only are we going to have the recognition for the Distinguished Toastmasters, we're also going to have all of the clubs that won various awards, area directors that may have won some awards, just a whole bunch of recognition. And so it's nice to have a lot of our Toastmasters there to cheer our fellow members on. We're also having a keynote speaker come about club membership development. So how to get more members in our clubs, which we both can really work on, both clubs. As Lloyd said, membership is down around the world. And so it's just one of those things, but I'm glad that you guys are hanging in there and we can rebuild Toastmasters. I know that. So register so that we can celebrate, because that's what it really is yay, way to go, Mary. Back to you.
Thanks, Vicki. I just want to thank Ron for some really great table topics questions tonight. I don't know how much you prepared for those, or if you just came up with them right before the meeting. That's typically what I do. About 30 seconds before I find out I'm Table Topics Master, or 30 seconds after I've found out I'm Table Topics Master, I've come up with my topics. Your questions tonight were very thoughtful, and what I really liked about the questions was it allowed everybody to come up with some really positive answers. Some of those questions, for instance, my question could have been either a negative thought process or positive thought process, and I chose to take the positive side of things. The topic itself is something that could have gone either way, and I just really like the fact that everybody took the opportunity to really focus on the positive tonight. And I think that this group typically does that. Ron, you often say that you are a negative Nelly, and I don't think you are as negative as you think that you are. You have a bit of a dry sense of humor that one could think that was maybe a negative personality, but I don't think so. I think you are a much more positive person than you give yourself credit for. And I think the group as a whole, I don't know all of you personally in a one-on-one basis like I know the folks in the electric toasters, but just from getting to know you all over this electronic means, I see some really great positive personalities here every Monday night, and I really enjoy coming to these Toastmasters meetings and spending some time with you all and getting to know you all a little bit more each week. So with that, is there any other questions? Rob?
Mr. President, before you adjourn, we should take a vote.
Yes, we should.
So if you would like to send me your choices, I will tabulate the votes.
We voting who's going to be on the thumbnail, the YouTube thumbnail?
Google gets to pick that every week, and
Yeah.
so far it's either Mary or Jackie. They've got a
It's going to be Mary. Yeah.
Okay. I believe everyone has voted. Thank you for your votes. We actually had 4 recipients receive votes tonight. That's really neat. That means everyone more than just the primary speaker is getting kudos for table topics. However, the winner this evening is our primary speaker, Lloyd Smith. Congratulations, Lloyd.
I finally found it. So here you go, Lloyd.
All right. At least we can look at it, you know.
There you go.
Well, there may come a day when we can actually get back in our room and get access to, you know, our banner and our timer and all that other stuff. Who knows? It's possible.
How far